Okay, let's talk about Hegel. Just hearing the name George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, yeah, it can be a little intimidating, right? He's got this reputation for being one of the toughest philosophers to read, but trust me, he's also one of the most rewarding. So today, we're going to demystify him. We're not just going to read his work, we're going to map out a clear path, an ascent right into his revolutionary way of thinking.
And right out of the gate, Hegel tells you exactly what he's trying to do. It's this massive, monumental ambition. See, he wasn't happy with philosophy being just a love of knowledge. No way! He wanted to turn it into a science, something that could give us actual, systematic knowledge of reality itself. I mean, think about that. That's not a small adjustment, it was a total game changer for philosophy.
So to really get what Hegel's up to, you have to kind of picture the world he was born into. The Enlightenment, for all its incredible progress, had left behind this divided world. You had the thinking mind over here and the physical world over there. Freedom on one side, nature on the other. Thought versus being. For Hegel, this was a huge problem, and he saw philosophy's main job as healing these fractures, of showing how all these seemingly opposite things were actually part of one single unified reality.
All right, so how are we going to tackle this climb? Here's our roadmap for the ascent. First, we'll dig into his great project. Then, we'll look at his unique method. He calls it pure looking. We'll check out the engine that drives all his thinking, the famous dialectic, and even take our first little climb with a core example. Then we'll map out a reading path, and finally, get a glimpse of the summit, the ultimate goal of his entire system. Sound good? Let's go.
All right, first up, Hegel's great project. What was the big idea? Well, at its core, Hegel wanted to show us that reality isn't just some random, chaotic collection of separate things. He believed it's a single, rational, interconnected whole. And his philosophy is all about resolving those big divisions we talked about into one unified picture of reality. And this right here, this is the absolute key. If you get this, you're halfway to understanding Hegel. His core idea is that the structures of our thought and the structures of reality are, in a really deep way, identical. For him, logic isn't just a set of rules for arguments. No, logic is the rational scaffolding of the universe itself. The patterns of our thinking, when you really get down to it, actually mirror the fundamental patterns of everything that exists. You could say thought and being are basically two sides of the same coin.
Okay, so if thought and reality are one and the same, how on earth do we even begin to see that? Well, Hegel's approach is probably not what you'd expect. He doesn't say, go invent some grand new theory. Instead, he gives us a very specific method, and it's all about just watching.
He calls it pure looking. The idea is, instead of forcing our own prepackaged ideas onto the world, we just need to pay super close attention to our own experience, to what's actually there in our consciousness. And if we do that, he claims, something amazing happens. We start to see that our nice, neat, fixed concepts, well, they aren't so fixed after all. They start to move, to shift, to develop, all on their own.
And this quote just nails the mindset he wants us to have. He says the concept is active and develops itself, while we just look on. Our job isn't to be an architect building some system from the ground up. Nope, we're more like a botanist, just attentively watching a plant grow. We just look on, let the concepts do their thing, and try to grasp the logic of how they develop all by themselves. We're literally watching philosophy happen, not making it up.
So this brings us to the engine that powers this whole process. When you start doing this pure looking thing, you begin to notice a very specific pattern, a kind of rhythm to how thought moves. And this, my friends, is Hegel's famous dialectic. Think of it like a three-step dance. First, you have what he calls the understanding. This is where we take a concept and treat it like a fixed, solid, separate thing. But then, and this is the cool part, the dialectical moment happens. We realize that this fixed idea, when you look at it closely, actually contradicts itself and flips over into its exact opposite. And finally, you get the speculative moment. This is where we grasp the unity of both the original idea and its opposite. They come together to form a new, higher, richer concept that contains them both.
Okay, that might sound a little abstract, so let's make it real. We're going to put this dialectical engine to the test with probably the most famous and definitely the most misunderstood example in all of Hegel. This is the very first move he makes in his big book, The Science of Logic.
So Hegel says, look, we have to start with the absolute simplest, most bare-bones thought we can possibly have. And what's that? Just being. And I don't mean the being of a chair or a cat or a planet. Nope, just pure abstract being itself. No qualities, no content, no specifics at all. It is, as he says, pure indeterminateness and emptiness.
Okay, got that? Try to hold that thought of pure, empty being in your head. Now, on the other hand, think about pure nothing, complete emptiness, the total absence of, well, anything.
So, what's the actual difference between thinking pure being and thinking pure nothing? Since both are completely empty and have no defining features, there isn't one. You can't tell them apart. The moment you try to think pure empty being, your thought just slips and becomes the thought of pure empty nothing. They're totally indistinguishable. And yet, at the same time, we know they're supposed to be absolute opposites. Wild, right?
Now, this constant flipping back and forth, this vanishing of being into nothing and nothing back into being, that's not a mistake or a dead end. That restless, unstable movement itself is a new, more solid concept. Hegel calls it becoming. Becoming is the truth that holds both being and nothing together. And boom, that's the dialectic in action. We went from one concept to its opposite to a new concept that unifies them.
Now, it's super important to get this next part right, and Hegel himself warns us about it. He is not, I repeat, not saying that your house is the same as nothing, or that it doesn't matter if you have $100 in your pocket or not. Of course not. He's talking about the purest, most abstract categories of thought imaginable. This logic applies to pure being, not the specific, concrete being of your coffee cup.
Okay, so now for the super practical part of our climb, the trail map. With a system this huge and, let's be honest, this complicated, knowing where to even begin reading is absolutely crucial.
So, where do you start? I mean, diving into Hegel can feel like getting dropped into the middle of a dense jungle with no map and no compass. But the good news is, Hegel actually drew a map for us. He designed his system to have a clear entry point for beginners.
And here it is. He specifically wrote his first big book, The Phenomenology of Spirit, to be the introduction, the guided ascent. It's designed to take our normal, everyday, natural consciousness on a journey, all the way up to the viewpoint of real philosophical science. The destination of that journey is his other huge book, The Science of Logic. That's the system itself, the structure of the summit. So the path is clear. You start with the phenomenology to make the climb, and then you'll be ready to appreciate the view from the top in the logic.
All right, we've talked about the climb, the path, the engine. But what's the whole point? After all this hard work, what's the ultimate goal? What's the view actually like from the top of Mount Hegel?
The goal is to get to a place he calls absolute knowing. And this is the point where that big split we started with, the one between our minds and the world, between subject and object, is finally healed. You no longer see yourself as just some separate person looking out at a foreign reality. Instead, you recognize that the rational structure of your own mind is the rational structure of reality itself.
And that brings us to the grand finale, the biggest takeaway. For Hegel, at the end of the day, there is only one reality. It's not like there's a world of stuff out there and then a totally separate world of thoughts in our heads. No, there is just one single rational, self-developing reality. And we, as thinking rational beings, are the special point in the universe where that reality becomes conscious of itself.
And that leaves us with a final, really profound question that his whole system kind of points to. If reality itself is a rational process, and if our own minds are a part of that very process, what does it mean to be a rational being living inside of it? Understanding the world, then, is also about understanding ourselves in the deepest way possible. And that, well, that's the incredible journey Hegel invites us all to begin.